What's good in the hoodie too? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Power Rangers Beast Morphers episode 6. This episode is called Hangar Heist, and this episode overall was really good. It led to the first formation of the Megazord, it led to some cool references, and it also led to something that will potentially be very new, but very exciting to see. So all that and more was seen in this episode. So let's get started. The episode begins with us seeing that Nate is in the lab. He's discovered using the slicer drone that Devin captured that he may have a system now to track when Giga drones are summoned. So he's going to take advantage of that. And Nate's super happy with Devin, and Devin feels that it's all about his instincts, that he had those instincts when it came to getting it without destroying it. So that's important, and later on we'll learn why that's something that he has to learn more about than just believing in his instincts alone, because there's more to that. But let's keep going here. So what does end up happening is that Devin asks for some Morph X from Nate, and Nate gives it to him, and he asks why. He says, I need it for some rockets that we're launching outside. And so, he does that, and Nate's asked if he wants to join them or not, and Nate says, no, I have a date with some data right now, so I'm kind of busy, because he has to focus on this information that he got. So what happens is that we see the three Rangers are outside, they're launching some rockets. At first, Ravi launches a rocket, and he says something having to do with Nasada. And you may think to yourself, what's Nasada if you don't know older Power Ranger seasons? Nasada is actually the space organization that was in Power Rangers Turbo and Power Rangers in Space that led to the Turbo Rangers going into space during Power Rangers in Space. That was the group that launched them in there. So it's kind of a cool nod to Nasada, which I really, really love. And I think that that's something that a lot of people who have seen Power Rangers Turbo and know about Power Rangers in Space will just appreciate that little nod, just because that really shows they're paying attention to even the smallest of details like that, and that shows that in Space and Turbo are still connected in that universe and all of that, which is very, very good. Very, very good. I'm very happy with that. So we see that happen. We do also end up seeing that Ben and Betty launched their rocket, which is actually the General's rocket, their father. And when they try to launch it, it actually doesn't work very well, because it's starting to topple side to side, and it actually launches where it starts chasing them, and then they have to follow their rocket, which doesn't go over super, super well. In the meantime, we also see that Devin launches his rocket, and Devin's rocket doesn't work very well at all, because he didn't put certain parts in the correct way. And what happens is that Devin doesn't believe in Ravi when Ravi says, you didn't put it in the right way. He thinks that, something must have been wrong with the parts themselves and not with what he did himself, because he doesn't believe that his friends know better, so he can't trust in his friends at this moment. So that's kind of a weird thing to see. But what we do end up seeing as well is that in the cyber dimension, we end up hearing about how Evox is very upset because the Rangers got the Giga drone, which is the slicer drone or whatever, and he wants Blaze, Roxy, and Scralzo to come up with some plan to either get it back or to do something to them, because right now they're not in a good position. So what happens is that Roxy goes on a mission to figure out where their special ops location is. Now what we do end up seeing is that in the meantime, I don't remember the exact order of the events here, but what I remember is that we see this at a certain point that the Rangers are doing a simulation, summoning the Megazord. Commander Shore comes in, Nate's watching over everything, and what happens is that Devin fails to trust in Ravi when Ravi gives him suggestions based on his past experiences working with Blaze and Roxy. And so what happens is that they lose during the mission, and Commander Shaw has to teach Devin the fact that yes, your instincts are good and you're a very smart person, but you have to also be able to trust in your team. You're a leader, but great leaders are great for their skills and great because they trust in their team. They don't just trust in themselves alone, because you're a team. You have to trust in each other. And he doesn't immediately realize that, but it does act as a wake-up call for him later on in the episode. So what does end up happening is that, as I was saying, we end up seeing eventually that Ben and Betty end up finding their father's rocket has been damaged. The parachute went off, but not all the rockets went off. And what happens is that like not all the rocket sections went off, like where the fuel comes out. So what happens is that they're a little bit concerned about that. And what we end up seeing is that Roxy has found the special ops base. And what happens is that Ben and Betty contact the base about summoning the Rangers. And what happens is that Roxy ends up seeing Ben and Betty trying to retreat, and she ends up launching an attack which sets off the rocket, and they end up flying into space for some time. Well, they end up flying into the air. We don't know where they go. Following this, though, the Rangers do come on the scene. We see them transform, and we also see that there's a monster known as Meltatron, and Meltatron has the ability to melt things, and he actually manages to remove their suits initially, and then he says it's melting time, and then the Rangers are like, no, it's morphin' time, and so they morph, and so we end up seeing that happen, which is really good. And they end up fighting Meltatron, and we see that Roxy manages to get into the special ops base, which the Rangers get into as well. And we see eventually that she manages to, set off, have Meltatron, I believe it was. I forget how this works, but something happened that basically led to Slicer Drone now being activated, where it will, after a certain amount of time, begin to destroy the special ops base. So that happens, and then on top of that, the doors that are in the base begin to lock on them, and so they basically have to deal with Meltatron and also the potential damage from Slicer Drone, while having to find a way out. And so what happens is that Ravi ends up saying, "You're gonna have to trust me with this plan," to Devin. And what happens is that Ravi throws Devin out of the hangar so that he can actually go and get his Zord and try to break them out. And what happens is that, by the way, Roxy does end up leaving by this point. And what happens is that Devin manages to go on cruise, and they manage to summon the Robo Racer Zord and fight a Gigadrone, and also try to deal with the hangar situation that's happening. And what we end up seeing is that in the meantime, the Rangers are fighting against Meltatron, and the Slicer Drone is being summoned. We end up seeing that over time, the Rangers end up summoning the Rangers manage to escape, but we also see that at one point, Scrozzle comes into the special ops base, and he managed to steal a bunch of equipment, including the helmet for the Silver Ranger, or J in Japan, which makes people very curious, because what that helmet could lead to is actually the Silver Ranger turning evil, which is a really big deal in all honesty, because if the Silver Ranger turns evil, that's something that's completely different from what they did in Japan, because the Silver Ranger was good from the start. He never was meant to start off as evil. So that's a very interesting thing for them to do. And we see that he actually does manage to bring it back to the cyber dimension, so that's important. But what we do end up seeing as well is that with the Rangers, they manage to summon their Zords, and they're fighting against two Gigatrons, because they have the main one and that one. They have Slicer Drone and the Gigadrone. And what happens is that they have to fight two of them, and they have to also summon their Zords, and they do so, and they manage to form the Beast X Megazord, and they use the shield this time rather than attacking right away, because that will allow them to actually protect themselves when they're summoning their Zord. And they do so, and this leads to them summoning the Megazord and then fighting against the Gigadrones, and they manage to defeat both of them using the Beast X Hyper Strike, I believe it's called, which is their finishing move, which allows them to finish off two Gigadrones at once, which was really, really good to see. And really, really great to see all that. And Devin finally trusts in his teammates, and we see that they surprise Ben and Betty by fixing the rocket, Ravi and Devin, which makes sense because the two of them are the ones that were actually fighting, really. And what we do end up seeing is in the cyber dimension, the Rangers end up What happens is that, you know, Blaze and Roxy are scolded by Evox, but Scrozzle ends up talking, like, Evox says, "Did your plan go over well?" Scrozzle says, "Yes, my plan went over without a hitch." And what happens is that Blaze is like, "What was your plan? What did you do?" And what happens is that Scrozzle's like, "I don't talk to those that fail. I only talk to those that succeed." And so what happens is he doesn't tell Blaze and Roxy what his plan was, but essentially what we're made to believe is that him capturing that helmet was to lead to him making his own Silver Ranger, presumably. Again, we don't know if that's 100% fact now, but it is something that people are now pretty much believing is the case, which will be very interesting to see if that is the case, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that in the near future as to what they're going to do with that. And just in general, I'm liking what they're doing. I know this review is relatively shorter, mainly because there wasn't a whole lot to really talk about with this episode. You know, it was perfectly good. I'm really interested to see if the Silver Ranger thing does end up happening the way I'm thinking it is. The fact that they're using that helmet over and over again, I mean, there's just constant foreshadowing going on here, which is great, and I think that that's wonderful because, you know, doing things like that implies like they really want you to pay attention to that helmet and remember that like later on that's going to be important, and I think that that's wonderful. I'm just really excited to see when it's finally revealed like what it is, who it is, or whatever like that. So just keep it all in mind. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think. Are you guys liking the show so far? Are you looking forward to next week's episode? Again, the final episode for the spring, I believe, is supposed to be episode 8, so we are 2 episodes away from being done with the spring half of the season, supposedly, unless they decide to make the spring half longer this year. I don't know if that's the case. I would love it if they did, but at the same time, I wouldn't complain if they waited, just because that way we can have a longer fall half again. But we'll have to wait and see. Otherwise, that's been it for me, guys. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye.